Is it live?
Okay, hi everybody. We're here for stop number 4 of the virtual book tour. And I'm so excited about this interview because we have Amy Chavez from Naperville who is running for the DuPage County Board. And I am just so excited about all the women who are moving into politics and really claiming their leadership and finding their voice to really impact their communities. So thank you so much, Amy, for coming on.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. Congratulations on your book tour and your book. And that's so exciting for you. So way to go. And congratulations on such a tremendous effort and seeing it to fruition and now having this exciting time.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, the book has been about a year in the making. And then along the way, being the high achiever that I am, I started going, oh, you know what? If we add a workbook to it, it would be so much better. And then let's add these meditations and visualizations. And how about an affirmation card deck? So
I love it.
Yeah, it really grew from this one thing, this book, into this really a whole system that my biggest motivation was that I wanted these women to not just learn this and carry the knowledge in their head, but I wanted them to live it and get it out of their head and into their life. So
I love that.
Thank you. And Amy, I think you are a great example of that with what you're doing right now. I think that you are just really living that wise leader in your community. And I'd love to hear more about what you're doing. And, you know, one of the things I talk about is the 5th principle is really knowing your why. So I'd love to hear about your why and how you got motivated to run for office.
Sure. So, I mean, I've always been active in my community, but actually when it comes to county board, I just started to see an injustice, to be honest with you. There was a woman who was running who I had voted for in the primary. And then by the time the general came around, I heard that she had been technically removed from the ballot. And I thought, well, how does that happen? How are you on the ballot? And it was that her one apartment building in her one complex at the state level was drawn into her district, but at the county level was drawn out of her district. So there was a discrepancy there. And I thought, oh, how terrible to have just the smallest of mistake, you know, make her not be able to fulfill her dream. So I started to attend some of the county board meetings to find out what was going on. And I got some more information. And then we actually, that year, our votes were slow to be counted here in DuPage County. And I thought, oh, this isn't right. We can do this. If Will County can do this, DuPage County's got to figure this out. So I attended a few more county board meetings to find out. And in the process, I realized that some of the skills that I had honed in the corporate world could be put to work on the board and could be put to work for my community and could make a difference. And so I just really wanted to step up and step in, and that's how I landed here. So I guess more about my why, that was really the question, but the why is really serving. I think at the end of the day, like I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I have a heart for our community. We used to live in Seattle, Washington, and we settled here 7 years ago. My husband's job made a move for us to come here to the Midwest, and we've fallen in love with it. Our kids love their schools, their neighborhood. We've made fabulous friends here. And I think at the end of the day, just having this drive to continue to make things better. And when things weren't quite what I thought they could be, I realized that, you know, who's going to step in? And then I had friends who said, well, why don't you run? Why don't you run? Why don't you run? And they say sometimes it takes asking a woman 7 or 8 times to run for office before she finally says yes. And I think I saw that enough women and men both had enough confidence in me to say run. And I thought, okay, I don't know anything about running for office, but I'm going to give it my best shot. So that's kind of how my why is.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic to know that, you know, that you're enough, that you can do it, that you're capable, and to have all of that support. One of the things I talk about in the book is about lifting each other up, right? And that women really need to collaborate and not compete with each other. And that with every time one of us wins, we all win, really. It does something for women. And I know before we got on, you were telling me about some of the fabulous women behind
Yes.
you.
And sometimes people say run and then they fall away. But what I was so lucky to have was this group, mostly women. We now have a few men on our team as well who've joined in, but we really started out as a core group of women who just said, run, Amy, run. We've got you in this. And, I said, hey, I don't know everything I need to know to do county board. I'm not an expert in stormwater, but I am an expert in budgets. And that's a lot of what the county board does. So, they help me realize that they're going to help me learn what I don't know. And they're going to be my security net if I need it. And honestly, they just help me every step of the way, even in just the little things. Like my campaign manager, Ellen May, is an amazing woman who has so many skills. But one of them is that she's an editor. And so she and I bounce ideas off of each other, and she helps just to make me better and take me to the next level. And there's not competition, it's just support. And I think that that's really what we all need, is just that feeling that, we've got this, because we've got people who are ready to support us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'll have to keep her name in mind for the next book.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, she's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. One of the things that you said that I think is so important for other women to hear is that you don't have to know everything or have all of the answers to put yourself out there to make a difference.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of women hold back because of that. And if you look at the research, men will apply for a promotion or new position, if they meet like 60% of the criteria.
Right.
And women are waiting for that 100% before they
Yep.
throw their hat in the ring. And so I just think that's a great point that you make, Amy. And do you have anything more to say about
Well, and I
that?
think I learned that early on. I mean, my first job out of college was with Lucent Technologies, and I was the liaison to the Salt Lake City Olympics and the committee for handling all the telecommunications needs for the Salt Lake City Olympics. And at the time, I thought, whoa, this is a big job. It was me and my boss. So it was really just all on the two of us. And it felt daunting. It was a $350 million budget. I couldn't have even fathomed those numbers when I was in college. And here I was, running this budget and running this RFP. But I think at the end of the day, I realized that there's so many people. You have to just learn that there's people you can turn to. I had a group of engineers that were actually here in Lisle. I was in Denver at the time, but they were here in Lisle that I could pick up the phone and call. I didn't have to know the engineering behind every single venue, but I could call and get an understanding. When it came to the budgeting aspect, we had to make sure that everything fell within the needs of the RFP so that we would get the business and that we could pursue it. And so, but there were people I could call to break it down and to help me break it down further. So I think at the end of the day, it's about knowing that you can reach out and not to feel ashamed for what you don't know, because I think that that's often what holds women back, is that they don't want to admit that they don't know. And I think that there's a huge amount of empowerment for you just to say, listen, I don't know the answer, but I'm going to call someone who does. And then all of a sudden you have just gone, by the end of the day, you've gone up 10 steps, because not only have you learned it, but you're ready to take the next step too. So I think to that point, men just jump in and women want to stay in the shallow water. But I think the more we can go into the deep water and just know that we can always ask for a life ring, we can always ask for help, but just try. So
I think women are kind of bad at asking for help.
It's true.
We're like used to, running the house and taking care of the kids and going to soccer practice and working and making dinner and all of that stuff. And we forget to ask for help. I think you make such a good point. And one of the things I talk about in the book is about assembling your tribe.
Right.
And that's what you're talking about, right? Like, you don't have to know everything. You have to have the right people in your corner to help you out.
100%. And I think that makes all of the difference, because even tonight, it's so funny you talk about dinner, because I was on calls and, everything till the end of the day. And then I knew we had this tonight. So I'm like, okay, I got to go get spruced up and get ready. And so it was just, my husband's my tribe tonight. He's got to get dinner on the table. He had to get it in the oven. I don't think he'd ever use, we're making pork. I don't think he'd ever use the little, this
The base.
the measure, what am I
Yeah.
trying to say, the temperature probe,
Yeah.
and he didn't quite know where to put it. And, you know, but it's, hey, now he's 10 steps ahead for tomorrow, right? So now he's learned a new skill.
Right.
So, but it's just a matter of like saying, hey, I need help tonight. I'm on this thing. You've got this. And you know, and they do, they really, really do, which is awesome. But it's true with the women around us too. It's like, I think we've all got to say, I can't do that tonight. I've got to focus on this. And this is something that's hugely important to me. And he knows that, my family knows that, my kids know that. So they know that for me to dedicate some time to this is going to be a huge payoff in the long run, because we're going to just have a better community. So
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, you know, as women, when our husband says, oh, I have to work late, or I won't be home for dinner, or we just roll with it.
Right.
And I really think that for the most part, our husbands want to support us as well. And they're
100%.
happy to do that.
They are. They are. And we don't have to own all of that. We feel like we do, I think, because of history and what time is said, or maybe how our mothers did it all. Although I saw my mom doing a whole lot. She got her master's degree when I was in elementary school. And I think she was a large reason of why I said, you know what? It's okay if I was at the sitter some nights late at night because she was in class. And, you know, she asked me once, she said, did you ever regret that? Or were you ever? And I said, there were times when I missed you, but having the perspective of it now and knowing how important getting her master's degree was to her and how much it propelled her own career. Wow. Like, it's hard when you're in the moment as a little kid, but as an adult, I just think, oh gosh, no, mom, like you showed me as an example what women are capable of. And sometimes they do have to make small sacrifices, like those evenings in school, or, you know, tonight's evening doing something wonderful like this. You know, you're not one-on-one with your kids, but you're doing something. And I hope my kids will look up to me the same way that I did to my mom for such an accomplishment. So,
yeah. I'm sure they will. I think it's really impressive to run for office and to really think about the impact that you can have in your community. And I think a lot of the choices that I make in life are about having two daughters. Yes. And knowing that I'm that role model, and I want them to see that you really can have it both, right? Yeah. You don't have to choose between motherhood and career. No. And you know, I've taken my daughter to speaking events with me. You know, they've been a big part of the book and lots of the things I've done. And I just see how that allows, their ambition to grow. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important for them to have that example. So I think we've talked a lot this week about Ruth Bader Ginsberg and the path that she laid for us to all come through and to have such success as women. But truthfully, even in our county, this county board was made up completely of men until 7 years ago. Which to me is just mind-boggling, because 7 years ago, I mean, it's not like it was the 1950s, 7 years ago. Right. So how was it that for so long a woman hadn't stepped up? And thank goodness 7 years ago, one woman was placed onto the board. And then a few years later, now we have 7. So 7 women and 12 men, including the chairman. But overall, our representation should reflect our community, and both from a gender standpoint, but from all of the diversity that we have in our area. And I think that that's what we really need to push for, is the more opportunity for women to step in, for people of color to step in, for people, just all the diversity that we have, different religions and sects and beliefs. I mean, we should want our representation to truly reflect us. And I think that that's another thing that has propelled me into this, is I know, you know, from being raised by a strong woman, that you have to have that example, and you have to be able to see that. So I'm hoping too that if we can get, you know, a more representative representation, I think that will really make our community better as well.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. And one of the things that I love about your platform is that you are so out front about the social issues that you're concerned about, you know, about healthcare, about gun violence, about, you know, diversity. And yet you also bring in this great fiscal background And so it's really a really nice balance. And I know it represents the values of our family, and it's really encouraging to see it out there.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I feel like, after I left Lucent, I did go into healthcare, and part of my job there was to work with our indigent patient program and our veterans. And so I think I bring a lot of heart because I learned from that industry, which is the pharmaceutical industry. It's all about making money, but luckily they do have certain programs that if we can tap into them, we can make it easier for our indigent patient program to get the medications that they need and that they deserve. They deserve not just the generic medications, much like our veterans. On their formularies, what I found almost all the time was that it's the generic form of medications that may not always be the gold standard that are made available to them. And I really pushed within my own company to make sure that the gold standard, especially for glaucoma and cataract surgery and the things that I could control, were on formulary for them. And I think that's something that I'll bring to the county board as I work with the health department. And as we tackle this COVID problem, we've got to bring the best to the table for our community. And that's going to require some shifting of funds, which I know how to do. So we're just going to have to be creative. We're going to have to be adaptable. And I think we've seen that the federal government has let us down recently. So really, in order to tackle these problems, we're going to rely on our local government to be adaptable and to be able to get money into the hands of small business and to be able to work with the health department. So hopefully the skills that I've mastered, I feel like I've, in some ways, things work out. I have telecommunications in my background, business and budgeting, a little bit of healthcare, which is so necessary happens to be so necessary for this particular election. So I think in some ways, maybe it all works out for a reason. It's kismet, it's a God thing, who knows? But at the end of the day, it was just meant to be. And so hopefully these skills that I've learned will really be put to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that I believe that things happen for a reason, and to have such a well-rounded background to bring to the board, I think is certainly an asset, and as well as obviously your passion and I think the genuineness, like you said, the heart. I think that's very evident when you talk to you.
Thank you. I hope so. We've got, I think it's 11 attorneys on the county board right now. And I think
Wow.
we need to mix that up a little and add a little heart, add a little, community. My slogan is community, character, Chavez. And I think that at the end of the day, I want it to be about community. I want it to be about character. And I want us to, work together and get along. And I want to reach across the aisle and make things happen, because really all the divisiveness that we've had in the past, or even where our country's going right now, for us being so separate, isn't going to work. We've got to come together to make these solutions happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what wise leadership is about. I think it's about making bridges. I think it's about being clear about your values and coming from a place of integrity and character and honesty, but also looking to see the other person's point of view and find the common ground where it's possible and start moving the needle again in the right direction.
I agree 100%. And there is so much more common ground, I think, than what we want to think, because, there's money to be made in us thinking that we're all each other's enemy. And that's, the talking points that we hear on the media, that we're all so divisive. But I think at the end of the day, and what I've learned in talking to the people here in Naperville and Aurora and Lyle, it's just like we've got a lot of common ground. So, I'm looking forward to representing those reasonable voices for District 5 and just making sure that we can find that common ground and get along and have a certain level of professionalism and respect. There's been some issues with that, frankly, on the county board recently. And I think we've got to just demand a higher level of expectation. I know a lot of that stuff just wouldn't fly in the corporate world. So that's something that I will just keep at arm's length. But I think I've honed that as well. I know how to, work in a boardroom and have respect. Even when you're on completely different sides, you've got to figure out a way to get to the middle.
Mm-hmm. Right. As Ruth Bader Ginsberg said, you can disagree, but you don't have to be disagreeable.
It's so true. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah. And there is some, and she mastered that. I mean, if you think about who she worked with, if you look at her board, if we look at the Supreme Court justices and how varied in scope, and opinions. And yet, some of her best friends technically were on opposite ends of the spectrum. And she found a way to have these friendships and to hone these relationships and to enjoy time with them. And again, find that basic humanity in everyone. But then she still fought for the issues, which I think is
Right.
something that I can really admire.
Exactly. And it's, it is scary, right? When you first start stepping outside of your comfort zone, when you first start speaking up as a leader,
Right?
dissenting in public is not always easy, right?
No, and I think there's times that we need to allow that. I mean, I think as women, I don't want anyone to leave this conversation thinking that every day of this campaign has just been, incredibly there have been days when I've thought, oh my goodness, what have I gotten myself into? And is there an exit door? And we need
Right.
to say that we can have those days, they don't have to be that often. And I don't want anyone to think that they are, but you are going to hit those blocks where you think, wow, I'm spending a lot of time away from my family. I'm getting some pushback in these areas. I don't feel like we're making a ton of progress, but then something breaks through, and so allow yourself to just realize that when you are doing something completely new and completely different, you're going to have those moments where you think, where's the parachute? Is there a place where I can pull?
Right.
But at the end of the day, I'm so glad that I powered through those days. But I think we all have them. I think any woman in leadership, who's trying to be a wife and a mother and, a good community leader, you're going to have those days where you think, oh my goodness, this is a lot.
Right. And I think that's so important to say because, in the land of Facebook and photography and branding and everything, right? Everything looks so perfect.
Yes.
And the more women learn that it's okay, right? It's okay to have the crummy day. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be authentic. And you pick yourself up and keep going. But the more we know that those bumps are just normal, I think the more you can accept them and stay committed to the bigger picture.
I agree. And again, that's where your net comes into. It's having the support people around you can call and just say, okay, I just have to vent about this. I just have to talk about this for a minute. I need your feedback. I need to know, am I on the right track here? Or could I have done something better? And you need to have people around you who can actively reflect that to you and tell you, and then just keep you on the path, just keep encouraging you. So that makes such a huge difference.
Absolutely. I heard a speaker once say, big dreams need big support.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. And I think that as you're collecting kind of your tribe and your people to really, cheerlead you, bounce ideas off of the ones that can gear you into the right place when you're off.
Yes.
But I think it's also about kind of weeding through too, those naysayers and the people that can't get on board with your vision. You also have to get comfortable with letting some of those relationships go, or, not spending as much time, because you really want the people who are going to lift you up, not bring you down.
Yeah. And no matter what, you're going to hit those. I don't care if it's in, personal relationships, school relationships, work, running for office. I've sure met some people that I just think, wow, they're really supposed to be not on my team per se, but on our side, or whatever. And yet I still can't quite, get them to the point where they're like, woohoo, so you gotta let those go. That's like 1%. And if it keeps you up at night, don't let it, so I think you're going to hit people like that for whatever reason, you just don't click with, they just don't see your vision. They just don't get it. Maybe they have other issues of, sometimes it's jealousy. Sometimes they have their own insecurities that you don't even know. So you have to just let them be them. And, I am who I am. I come to the table as me. That's all I've got to offer. And you just have to realize that, I'm hoping that I'll get 99 out of the 100 votes out there, but there's always going to be that one who, goes a different way or makes a negative comment on my Facebook page or whatever, they're just let it go. Hide it and let it go.
And I think often for women, that's the hardest part of being a leader, You know, we tend to be conflict avoidant. We tend to be people pleasers.
Yeah.
And so many of us, you know, we get that one negative comment, which you know is going to happen, especially in politics or when you're taking a stand for something. And then, you know, the wheels start turning and we're ruminating and we're up at night.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you want to fix it. I mean, I think we as women are so used to finding a solution, and sometimes there's just not one. They're just on a different road in a different direction with a different destination. And so let them be on their road. And, but it's hard. It's again, I want to be completely transparent that there are days, a lot of times my team will go in and hide comments that we know are negative. And there's a small part of me that wants to unhide them so that I can see what it was. And I'm like, okay, that's a little crazy. You don't need to know. Your team hit it. It wasn't positive. You don't need to know. And so, you know, but it's learning those little things just to let it go. Like, you didn't need to know. They hit it for you. Isn't that great? And I have this fabulous team of women who are on it. And so, and it happens, you know, it happens on both sides of politics, right? So, I mean, that's just what you do. You just sometimes have that negativity out there and let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I'm amazed. I'll look at different, you know, political candidates on Facebook or Instagram, whether they're federal or local. And, you know, they could just post a picture of their dog or their workout and someone will make some crazy comment. And, you know, you do have to learn how to just kind of brush that off. And like you said, know that that's probably the 1%.
Right.
And there's many more people cheering for you.
I think so. And for sure. And I think it's a little bit harder. And I think this is what we have to remember with our kids. I mean, I've got two 12-year-olds. In the world of social media, everything is presented to you. So in the past, if I'd been running for county board in 1970, I never would have, you know, I may have run into someone at the coffee shop or someone who may have said something negative, but chances are they wouldn't have encountered this level of negativity. So in some ways, the challenge is realizing that this is being presented to you on a whole new level right in front of you that really isn't at a natural level at the same time. So I think we've got to remember to keep that in perspective. And for those of, I mean, I grew up in the 70s, so I knew what it was like to not have all these devices. And I really hope that, you know, we as moms and we as, you know, community leaders can help our kids know, because they're growing up with this constant feedback and not all of it's positive. So how do we help them to understand how to hit hide and how to hit ignore? Because I think that's going to be so important to their mental health and to all of our mental health as we, you know, navigate this constant world of being pinged and being commented on.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, you know, there's a big problem with the electronic communication in that people feel anonymous, even though they're not. And so they're willing to say things that they would never say to your face.
Yeah.
You know? And our kids deal with that. We deal with that.
Yes.
And it's really about getting back to kindness, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And just letting that go, like just blocking those people, you know, hiding them, whatever it takes, but focusing on the good. I mean, because there's so much good that comes from social media. I mean, you and I can obviously connected through social media. We never would have met. So, I mean, I think we have to look at the power of it to do goodness, but then also just shut down that nastiness too. So, because no one needs that. And to your point, you know, in leadership, I think that that's part of the role is identifying when things aren't quite right and being able to say, that's not really working, move on. So.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that part 2 of my book is kind of all about those obstacles. And most of them are internal, right? I talk about fear and imposter syndrome and sabotage. And you know, to be a leader and to be out in front, you really have to strengthen your mindset to be able to tolerate what comes your way.
You do. And I think as women, we are, I think to your point, we're just, you know, we're all made differently. So I just don't want to generalize women, but I tend to be kind of sensitive and emotional. And so I sometimes take things a little too personally, and I have to, you know, say it to myself or have someone say it to me, you know? So I think at the same time, be who you are and don't lessen who you are or what you feel, because I think part of what makes me me is that I feel big feelings, you know, and that's part of what makes me want to do what I do, is because I really do care. And So I think at the same time, it's balancing that with who you are just as a person and accepting it.
Mhm. And I am so glad you said that about being sensitive and emotional and big feelings, because I think there is such stigma around that, like, oh, women are like that, and it makes them irrational or this or that, right? I think
Yeah.
and I think that we need more sensitivity and empathy and the things that women bring to the table.
Yeah.
And as you were saying before, if our boards and our government actually represents the people, I just think it elevates the decisions you can make, because you have that balance. You can't be all of the logical and rational
Yeah.
brain and no heart. You
Right.
have to bring that together, and some people are stronger in one or the other. It's
Yeah.
not right or wrong or good or bad. It's about bringing that together to find the right solution.
It is. And where I saw that the other day was in Amy Klobuchar. I don't know if you saw when she was in session and she had just followed up Ted Cruz coming to the table, and he was very just, this is how it is. And then he spoke with such passion, and you could almost feel the emotion that I don't want to say she was on the verge of tears because I'm not in her body, but it felt like she just was so heartfelt and emotional and passionate about what she was saying about how this hearing was going down and how unfair it felt and how unjust it felt and how there was a certain level of hypocrisy that wasn't being addressed. And I thought, you couldn't say those things without those intense feelings. And I loved that she was just so real, and she was feeling that, and she literally put her speech aside, and yet she was composed and she was passionate and she made it through her points. And I think we have to realize that we as women, we can be passionate, we can be emotional, we can still make it through the bullet points that we need to make it through and make a strong story for what we want to convey. And that's fine. That's just how we do it. We do it a little differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, I kind of talk about that in Find Your Voice, that a lot of times women, for the positions that they want to hold, there's a man in that position. And so that's kind of the role model or the leader. And women feel like they have to communicate like men in order to belong and fit in. And it's not. It's exactly what you said about like finding your voice and knowing it's okay to be passionate or emotional. And
Yep.
that's what we need.
I agree. And let's not make it negativity just because, again, that's the example, or that's who sat in that chair before us and for so much longer. I mean, I think that we have to say that that chair is going to continue to look differently with every generation that comes along. And I really think that as we bring more women to the table, we bring more women to leadership, and especially in politics where it's so needed. And I think over the last few years, we've just seen an unprecedented number of women saying, I will step up because I don't like how this is going. But we're going to bring our own voice. And I think that's what's so wonderful.
Yeah. Yes. I want to end with one last question, because it is Yom Kippur, and we did just lose our very, very much loved Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'd like to ask you what she meant to you.
Ooh, that's a big one. Because I feel like what she brought was just this understanding that she belonged. And I think for me, walking into an unknown position, looking back at how many times she must have felt like, being one of, in her class of 500, I think she was one of 8 women, how hard that must have been to walk into those rooms, to be questioned why you were there. Why are you taking the seat of a man? So I just feel such gratitude to her, because I feel that so many of these doors that are open to me would not be open to me if it hadn't been for her. And if it hadn't have been for women of her generation that really fought for this. It's hard to put into words, because I feel that it's such a sadness that she's gone now. She was just such a rock and a foundation for so many women to turn to for what is the right path. And she really laid it out for us. And I think it's her strength and her perseverance that's going to give us all the power to persevere going forward, because I think we're going to encounter some things even over the next few months that we as women are going to have to put some armor on and really speak out against. And so can we find that same strength that she must have had? And so for me, it's honoring that strength, honoring that voice, and us all allowing ourselves, much like she did, to own that room, to own that space, and to claim it for our own, and to say, no, I do have a right to be here, and this is what I have to say. And so I really thank her for opening all those doors.
Yeah. I often think that I would not be here as I am if it wasn't for her. I wouldn't maybe not be a doctor, maybe not published a book on wise leadership for women, so many things, and just very grateful for the path she has made, and just ask all women to pick up the torch now, because it's our turn, and we need to do it, and we need to make sure we preserve her legacy.
We do. And I know we've all got it in us, because I think we all know what it's going to take over the next few months and even into the next few years, as we try to right some of the ship that may have gone a little off course here over the last few years. So I think we're all going to have to find that voice.
I agree. Well, Amy, it has been such a pleasure talking with you tonight. I could go on forever, and we'll have to meet up for a cup of coffee, socially distanced coffee sometime soon.
For sure. That would be wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, and so many congratulations to you on this huge accomplishment. I'm just so thrilled for you. So go get them, because that's what we got to do.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And if you're in DuPage County, I hope you vote for Amy.
Thank you. I'm in District 5, so I'm down in the bottom left corner. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.